Welcome back to the Build Different podcast with myself, Sam Weiss, and my brother David Weiss. We're glad you're here. Today we're gonna talk about community, and to start, I want to tell, I guess, a little bit of a story. Maybe about 5 years ago, kind of COVID timeframe actually, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is scary. Society's going to collapse. I mean, there were some moments I had, like there were some moments. And I thought I felt very vulnerable and I wanted to be more prepared. And so it started this process of me exploring self-sufficiency. And
Okay, was this just question, just like frame this. Was this literally before COVID or was it during COVID? Like you were experiencing the lockdowns and all the craziness and that was the trigger.
This is like, so during COVID, I've always been an independent person. I've always believed in self-sufficiency. We've done the food storage thing forever. But like it was a combination of, I think it was a combination of COVID. The year before, right around the same time, we had the Texas freeze and we had no power for 3 days. And we had like no backup heat for the house, no way. And like my blessed neighbor lent us a space heater and ran an extension cord from his generator to keep us warm, through that. So
what a good dude.
There was these compounding things. The point is like, I was like, man, it's time to get self-sufficient. And so I started digging in deeper to like, what do I need to do to be self-sufficient in power and energy? What do I need to do to be self-sufficient in food and food production and all these things, right? And it then migrated into this thing around homesteading, chickens, pigs, like gardening. And we've been on this path for maybe about 5 years. About 2 or 3 years into it, I had this realization. And the realization was, if I wanted to be like, the idea of me being truly self-sufficient, my family being able to produce for all of our needs, I was like, this is insane. like you have to like freaking grow the wheat and like the grains for the livestock and like have pasture and like what about water and like what about clothes and like textiles and fuel. It quickly became apparent that this idea that like I could like be self-sufficient as a family and we could like forever operate autonomously if we solved a few things. That idea just like vanished in front of me. I was like, this isn't real. What's real is being part of a group that can support one another. And that started me down this path of trying to understand this idea of community in the sense of survival and self-sufficiency in groups. So when we moved here, about 3.5 years, we moved out here to kind of a more country area. We're on just an acre and a half, but we're in the country in Texas. And we had a different plan when we moved here. And the plan here was to build a community, was to find a community, was to create a community and become part of the community, to find people who were like-minded, who could help support us, who we could help support, to build those friendships and to support each other through hard times. And so we've been on the journey of doing that. And because of that, the term community means a lot for me. I have like, it's there's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of, I don't know, intensity for me and meaning around that word. So that just frames this idea of I think that community is really, really important. So I guess to push it your way, I know that in your recent experience of living in the mountains in Wyoming, you have experienced community in a really meaningful way. And I'm curious, based on those experiences, how would you, how would you define or what would you say is a community, and how important is it?
Man, I guess the first thing I would say is I don't know. I have a lot of questions about it. I will tell you that so where we lived in, so I grew up in Washington State, and then we ended up moving to Utah for a job, and then we ended up moving to Wyoming about 4 years ago. And I didn't even know I was missing this. Like I didn't even know it was a thing that was outside of my. But there was in our church, a new bishop came in, and he was from the islands. I can't remember if he was from Samoa or Tonga, but he understood something about community. He kept trying to teach us about it, and I understood the words he was saying, but I didn't understand it like in my bones, like it wasn't like I'm like, in fact, I would even say to people, Bishop, he understands something about community that is really profound and really deep. Like I could see it out there, like conceptually, but it wasn't like a part of me. So then we moved up to Wyoming, and this is like a hard place to live, and we're remote. We drive into another state to go to Costco 12 times a year, like you really have to pull together. And when something goes down, like people are, I think I guess the first thing is that like when we moved in, all of the sudden people like knew us because there's only like our family meaningfully improved the population of our small city. It was like 5% increase in population, but like it was like it was all these small things. Like people would come over. Literally, we closed on the home. We came to the home, and some of the women from the area, they came and they brought a basket of bread and homemade preserves. And, with a letter it said, "We're so glad you're here. Welcome home. We've been waiting for you." Like, it was like this huge, awesome. And stuff like that just kept happening. I mean, like when we came, so we have a lot of stuff and too much stuff but we also have like a lot of complexity with large family. And so there's just a lot of stuff. So two 26-footers, Lon's driving one, I'm driving the other. We come up here and we pull in, and we asked if someone could come and help. And I know not everyone has this experience, but I'm just telling you the experience we had was that, 70 people showed up. Wow. And we were unloaded, 26-foot trailers. We were unloaded in like an hour. It was just like all out, like in the house or in the open barn or whatever. Like we were done. And a big part of that was Lana. She stood at the back and just directed people, and then she was like very efficient. But also I helped in terms of like packing everything in bins, and that helped like simplify stuff. But there's no way you could have done that without this 60, 70 people who showed up, and that was really impressive to me. And like ever since then, people are like actively it's like they're actively thinking. One guy comes up to me and he's like, "Are you okay for meat? Do you have enough meat for the winter?" And I was like, well, I kind of thought I did until you just asked that. Maybe I don't. Like, should I? Like, what is this like? I don't know what winter's like. Turned out that winter, we had the biggest snowstorm in 20 years. It was amazing. But next thing I know, I've got a half of elk that he's like, my daughter shot this elk, but you can come get half of it. And then another family's like, "Hey, you got enough elk for the winter?" And I never even heard elk, or like, it was not even in my mind. We didn't know how to butcher the thing. We put it on the, kitchen counter. We're trying to figure out what that is all about. Anyway, it was amazing. And, the like outward, like everyone seems to have arrows out. People are like, "I will help you. I'll drop everything and I will help you right now." It's just like, it's so amazing. And I would say, like, generally speaking, I tend to be thinking I do think about other people, but this was like a whole nother level. It was like we help and we work together, and I know you're going to help me in the future at some point, and I'm gonna help. I don't know that I help very much. I mean, I can do manual labor. These people are like very skilled, like, you know, they've been generational farmers type thing, and you know, they've forgotten more about farming than I'll ever understand. But everyone seems to be. It's like this active caring, and I think I was in a few months in where I was like, I called you and I said, dude, I didn't even know community was a thing, but it's a thing, you know? And I think I've started to understand more and more about what it means. And I think part of it is like, you don't have, everyone has, it's this, like, I almost like this realization that no one can do it alone, and everyone has something that everyone else needs. And like, everyone can learn from someone else. Everyone can learn from each other. It's like that baseline, like, assumption, instead of like this kind of maverick mindset that like, I've got to go it alone, be the self-made individual and that kind of thing. And I'm just grateful for the exposure, because you know, we lived in a master plan community in Utah, and it was like, the intent was to like create community. You know, but a lot of times what it produced was just like everyone comparing themselves against each other. And like, it was like, because there was no like, there was still this like undercurrent of rugged individualism. And that's missing here, because everyone up here is like struggling, like, to survive. And maybe that's part of it. I don't know. So I'm not going to say like everyone's like just destitute, because that's not the case. But like, there's this sense of like, what's that saying? I help thee and thee help me, and together we'll ascend, or something like that. We'll get together. We'll you know, grow up together. I think there's something just beautiful about that. Anyway, that's what I would say. I'm learning about it through my lived experience in this community, but I don't have it as a basis. I don't feel like I understood or felt it. I mean, I had a great childhood. We had a great thing going up in Redmond. You had it when our parents moved to Vancouver. There was a great thing there too. So I'm not saying it was, I'm just saying it wasn't bad, but this is different, and I can discern that.
Yeah. It does seem more, maybe intense, maybe it's more intentional. And I wonder if that's correlated to the harsh environment, where like there's like a very real physical survival thing that's happening where you are in the mountains, that's different than, you know, along the Columbia River.
You know, maybe that's part of it. Maybe that is part of it. You know, I mean, down the road, there are farmers, and they're like real farmers. They're not just like, you know, wannabe farmers, but like, that's their livelihood. They, you know, they make hay, they grow barley, they harvest it. And no, they also over the years have like branched out and have other income streams, and they've done that to, you know, weather the downturns and, you know, commodities prices and stuff like that. But when you're close to the land that way, I don't know, it just, maybe that's part of it, is that you just recognize that you are dependent. You know, maybe that's part of it, is you, when you recognize your dependence. You know, what do the islands have? They have like these huge typhoons and storms that come through and just level the island, and everyone bands together and picks up and tries again, you know, and rebuilds everything. You know, I think similar things happen in Florida and you know, the South. But I don't know. There's something that, I think there maybe is like a thing. I will say, what I like is that my kids are getting exposure to this at a young age, and it's creating this kind of like outward mindset. You know, it's this like arrows out instead of arrows in.
So good.
And it is good. So, you know, like today, a good example is today. Our neighbor called, and our neighbor to the south, they live in Utah. This is like their summer home. They don't ever come up during the winter. But their yard is immaculate. It's like so beautiful. And we had this big storm, and all the leaves fell down. And so they called, he texted me, and then it's like, hey, do you think the kids could help get the leaves off the grass? Because the leaves just rot and kind of like kill the grass. It's not good. The grass will grow better if the leaves are all gone. Bottom line. Anyway, so he's like, can you? And I'm like, sure. And so next thing you know, like, all the boys and a couple of the girls are over there using the lawn mower. First they rake it and they're like, this is too much. This is like an acre of lawn. And then they're like, let's use the lawnmower as a vacuum. They keep doing that. They're running back and forth, and we're going to get snow tonight. And it was beautiful the last 2 days. And so they've been going at it nonstop. I don't know. It's just like this. They were happy to do it. And I think they were, I think he will, I think they will pay him something, but it's like, they just felt so good doing something to help someone else out. And yesterday, my wife and I, or no, it was Monday, we went and visited a friend down the road she's living in her fifth wheel, and she needs help getting straw to protect it, the base of it. And so we talked about how we, what we can do to help. See, I can do things like that. I can do manual labor, like the unskilled labor. I'm good at that. But I think there's something to that. Maybe what do you think community is as you've been like exposed to it? Like, what's your take on it? Because I feel like I'm struggling to, create a clear definition.
I won't pretend to have like a super clear definition, we'll say, in my head, but I have some like inklings of like what it feels like. And there's a gentleman in our area, kind of an old timer. His family's been here forever, and he's taken notice of me and my family and is offering help all of the time. And so like last year we raised a pig, and I knew that he did pigs every year, and he was way more than happy to, come over and teach me how to castrate the pig. He taught me how to, process the pig when we harvested. And it was just very natural for him. He was like, let me come teach you. Let me come help you. And it was also very natural for him to say, hey, I'll help you process your pig. Can you help process mine? Right? Like that. And it was, so we went over,
like, sure,
we did
totally.
mine. And then the next day we did his, and got it all quartered. Anyway, so things like that, or this same gentleman, he has a plucker. I didn't. When we did a bunch of meat chickens, he was like, use the plucker. And it actually isn't even his plucker. It's his nephew's plucker. But
totally.
Like, it's it's one of these tools that this community shares. And he's like, you're welcome to use it. You might have to replace some of the little fingers. And of course, I'm trying to be a good community member. So I do a very deep clean, and we replace every single one of the fingers that are probably, 20 years old. And they were pleased by that. And I was like, we got to make a little progress, right? So I'm
contributing something. I'm not just a leech on society.
I'm trying. I think it feels like that. I think it feels like people who are willing to provide help, when you need help, and it feels like giving help when you're capable of giving help. That same gentleman, when I was finishing out our attic upstairs, it was like a 2-year project. He was like, hey, I know how to do drywall, and I've never done any serious amount of drywall. And he came over and helped me do drywall for an afternoon or two. And anyways, it's just things like that. I think it feels like that. I think it feels like being able to ask for help when you need it, being willing to provide help when it's asked. I think it feels like being, heads up, aware of people around you, asking them how they're doing, trying to find ways to help them. I think it feels like maybe I know that for me, I have like a natural tendency to like maybe keep score in a way. And you've kind of made this comment of like, I don't have anything to offer or whatever. And I think a lot of these old timers that are used to being a member of a community, they're like not very worried about it. They're like, they feel
No.
very calm about, I'm going to help you. And you know what? Someday you might help me in return. And someday you might not, and that's okay. Someday you're going to go help someone else and like pay it forward. And that's going to be like, it's just very, it's very freely given, you know, this assistance.
That is totally true. I totally have a thing in my brain where I'm like doing mental accounting, and I'm like, am I really adding value here? Or is like, you know, that this kind of like, maybe it's not tit for tat is probably pushing it too far, but I think about it. I'm like, geez, I feel like, and I will tell you, I feel like in the 4 years that we've been here, I do like, I'm just telling you, I am the recipient like way more than I am the giver, you know? And I don't know what to do about that. I keep trying, but they're just amazing. And you're right. They just don't have any, like they're operating. Oh, I'll tell you this story. So the way we got up here is we sold our house, lived in our motorhome. It's really hard to find land or housing up here. So we moved into our motorhome, and we're living at the RV park that closes for the winter. I was just, so, you know, like, and I was stressing. Lana was like full of faith, but I was stressing. I was freaking out. And, anyway, so at the end of every workday, we're going out and looking at exploring the valley hither and yon. And there was this one time when we went to this, talked to this old timer, and, I got to talking to him, and he made this comment I thought was so great. He's like, you know what we produce here? You know what our greatest export is? And I said, no, I don't. He says, our kids. Here, we raise damn good kids. That's what we do.
I love it.
And I thought, okay, like I'm digging this. But then as we eventually found this house, and I discovered in our little, like where I live, there's 2 little towns, and they're almost one town. I mean, the second town where we live in is like, it used to have a post office, but it doesn't anymore. In fact, what was the post office is now our little cottage that used to be the post office. Anyway, she's super tiny, like less than 200 people type thing, and certainly like down to like 100 in the winter. And anyway, all of a sudden I get to know these people, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like the multi-generational family, you know, where grandpa and like still exists. Like I thought that was like a relic of like bygone days, but
meaning
like
they live in the same home still, or
so the kids are, so, you know, originally the parents have kids, and kids are still living right nearby, or the parents have like parceled off parts of their land so their kids could, you know, make a go of it. They grow up right next to them, and then the next generation does the same thing. Like that is absolutely a thing here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is for, like, I didn't know that, like you could even do that. I didn't think like things were, and what that's created is that there's this distribution that's like this smooth distribution between like these elderly, like wise individuals, and then like middle-aged individuals, and then these very young beginner, you know, families starting out. There's just like, and I feel every one of these, especially on the older end, they are like interested to teach and care for my kids. I mean, they're not like babysitting, but you know what I'm saying? Like if they have an interaction, they're like, how can I help this young buck figure out life? You know, they care. And I'll give you an example, a couple examples. One is I've hunted every year, tried to hunt, but I never actually get anything. In fact, I've never even been able to pull the trigger. I mean, that's how bad of a hunter I am. But everyone up here, they hunt like mad, and they're really good at it, very skilled, and it's very difficult to hunt up here. And but it's beautiful when it can happen. So my boys that have lived here, every one of them have gotten elk, some really big ones, and I've never been there because someone comes up and says, "Hey, can I take your boy off to hunt?" Or, you know, "Hey, can I take this boy?" And next thing you know, they're coming back with this huge bull or this, wonderful cow and that's the meat we eat for the year. And it's really been like they're learning from that experience, they're learning. And one of the things I've struggled in the city with is like finding work for my kids. But everyone up here is like, oh yeah, we gotta put the kids to work. Like
Yeah,
that's how
so
this
good.
works. And like, where I felt like almost sometimes, not everyone obviously, but sometimes almost like you're putting, why you there's this idea that like you don't need to work. Well, here it's like, no, we gotta find work for these kids. And I just feel really supported by multi-generational. And it's great for me because I feel like, I got a lot to learn from these guys. And similarly, Lana, with the older women and who've just been around. And you know what? When this last month, so November 1st, no, November 2nd last year was the last. I ended my my employment ended, and almost a year to the date, like off 2 days, I got my first paycheck for and I'm gainfully employed. Yay, right? And that year of, think about what that meant. That meant Thanksgiving, Christmas. And I was depressed. I didn't know I was depressed, but I can now see that I was very depressed. And all of that, people would come by with food. They'd drop off, gifts. They'd ask you. This one great man down the road. One time I was just really feeling down, and we were sitting in his front yard, and literally he just sat there and listened to me. Didn't say anything, no advice. The guy's got a ton of advice. He probably could have solved the whole thing for me, but he just sat there and listened to me. And that was the best thing he could have possibly done. That kind of support through this like really difficult time. Man, it was very meaningful to me. It was very meaningful to me. And so like you feel a kind of like safeness or like a safety, a kind of support that I don't think I've ever really felt before. And I don't want to like throw people under the bus where I've lived elsewhere or whatever. I'm just saying it does feel different. And maybe that's more about me being aware of the vicissitudes of life and the difficulties in life and be more aware of that. And as a consequence, being more aware of that, being more sensitive and soft and wanting to be helpful.
Yeah. Just to go back a little bit, one of the stories you talked about your sons getting elk. One of the stories that stood out to me is, and this is related to the idea of like this community is focused on producing children, good human beings. It's also related to, just related to the community. Everyone's focused on how they can help those around them. So I'll attempt to tell the story. Maybe you can correct it. But your son was hunting. I think it was the last day, stressing about getting an elk for the year.
Last year. Yep.
And he gets an elk, and his buddy, who had skipped school to also go hunting on the last day of the year, saw him shoot the elk. And instead of continuing his hunt, he packed up and went over and helped pack out the elk of his friend. And this is like a teenager. I don't know, a junior, senior in high school. I don't know what he was, but like, there's just a lot of selflessness in that act of giving up the rest of the last day of hunting for the year to help somebody else, pack out the elk that they shot. And being, excited for that person that got the elk, even though you didn't get the shot. Anyways, what a great example of like high quality human being, high quality young man that's being developed in this community that understands that like, oh, I can go help there. There's this thing that I really want, like, I really want to like hunt on the last day and go find my own elk, but like I'm gonna go help this person because I can. Get the elk back home. How amazing. Just totally inspiring.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, I think it is, you know what? I think maybe one of these like undergirding principles is this idea of scarcity versus abundance. These seem to be polar opposites. And I think when you have a community that feels like, you know, there's enough and to spare, there's enough time, there's enough. I remember one time I was talking to my friend and I made the comment, there's always enough time to do the right thing. And he's like, what are you talking about? That's totally not true. He's like, that's not true at all. And it just shows like people can get like these, you know, that young man who I know I've worked with, he has in him like, yeah, there'll be other elk hunt, there'll be other hunts, there'll be other opportunities. You know, it's this idea that there is abundance. And when there's abundance, then there's time to spare. I mean, there's time to help, there's time to live, there's time to, you know, put another person ahead of your own needs. But if you feel like so constrained that like nothing, you know, that there's never going to be enough and you're always having to fight and it's a zero-sum game and all that kind of thing, then yeah, there's a problem. And I see examples like that all day, like all the time. It seems like every week I'm exposed to that again and again and again. It's just really instructive for me, who I think developed a little bit of a internal arrows in kind of, and also a scarcity mindset, you know, that like there's not, you know, if I don't get this going, it's not going to work out. And I will tell you, like the community around me supported our family financially through this difficult time. And that what like, dude, I go to the ends of the earth. I would go to the ends of the earth for these people.
Yeah.
And it totally changes the way you feel about them. And I think there's just something really human and normal and natural about that. And you know, I hope I don't believe it has you don't have to move up to the mountains, you know, Wyoming, although I would recommend it. It's very good up here. Like I love it. Sam, you've got to come up here. But yeah, as we start our 6 months of winter, but I think it can happen anywhere. I experienced it in the jungles on my mission in northern Brazil near the Amazon, and these people, they operate in this way. I can recognize it in retrospect. I didn't see it as clearly at the time, but in retrospect, no, these are people who have dirt floors, dirt walls, like mud, and then palm tree leaf roofs, and they're just like so happy, and they're so connected. And I just think there's a lot to learn about that.
Something that is related to this that I think I learned over the last year, and this is more on the topic of like how do you build a community, how do you be a part of a community, how do you participate well. This is like maybe a year and a half ago. I started. We'll start this way. A lot of men. I'll put myself in this category for sure, but men and women, a lot of people, are uncomfortable asking for or receiving assistance, and they want to go do it on their own. They don't. They're too prideful. I'm in this.
Why do you think that is? Like, what's the issue there? What do you think is like the core reason?
I don't know what the core reason is. I think maybe it's just a natural state of like, you know, a pride, right? But what I will say is that what I learned, I had this thought. This is maybe a year and a half ago. I thought, man, there's no way that I'm going to be able to be a part of a community or build a community unless I'm able to like help people. And I don't think the other prideful men like myself are going to ask for help unless they feel like they can. And one way to do that is to ask for help. For me to ask for help, because once I ask for help, and I am in some ways in their debt, or in, you know, and I've I guess broken this initial interaction of saying, hey, I need your help. Will you come help me? In my experience, it then gives them the permission to ask for help in response. And it was that way with the gentleman I mentioned earlier. I asked him for help for like the plucker for the chickens. And then, you know,
That's so counterintuitive.
it's very counterintuitive. But, and then with another gentleman, again, with the attic project, he had built his own house and I needed help with some stuff. And I was like, hey, can you come help me? He was so happy to come help me. And I was like, hey, if you need help, just let me know. He probably came over three or four times. I've been over there a few times to help him with his projects, hang sheetrock, put up a mini split, things like this. And so this is the counterintuitive thing is to be a good, to initiate a good community, to participate in a good, sometimes you need to ask for help to start that interaction. And some beautiful things happen. You invite them to come help you. We're hanging drywall or something upstairs, right? I get a couple of hours to interact with this gentleman and get to know him a lot better. And we
when
can
you're
start to
working
develop
together,
a
there's
bond,
something.
right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he invites, he asks if I can go help him. And again, like we get to develop a deeper bond. And so, yes, the counterintuitive part is in order to build a community, you need to ask for help. Now, the caveat here is like, you also need to be willing to provide help. like if you only ever ask for help, I think people will pick up on that pretty quick. And I don't know that has long legs in developing lasting relationships. But
It's kind of a chilling effect on the community.
right. But if you're willing to be humble and ask for help, and if you're willing to in turn provide assistance, I have found that to be one way to help the community strengthen and grow.
That's really an interesting, and I guess it could be as simple as, hey, do you have some butter, or do you have some eggs, or, like the most
for sure.
basic starting place, and then move, like that creates, this sense of connectedness. That's a really great point, and very counterintuitive for me.
Yeah. What to answer? What would your answer be to your question? Why are we so naturally opposed to receiving assistance? To asking for help?
I think there's that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, or something like that. I think, culture is like, probably a lot of different ways to define it, but one way to define it is like, this is how we do things here. And the American culture is very maverick. It's very, it's like Ralph Waldo, the Emerson. I can't say his name. He wrote that famous self-reliance article so long ago, and his Ralph Waldo Emerson, that's who it was, and he, I think that set in motion this idea that it was like, it's good, it's like virtuous to be a self-made man or woman. It's like this undercurrent of like, go it alone, you can do it. It's celebrated in videos and movies and books and whatever. And I think it's just rubbish. It's just hogwash. There's no one's a self-made individual. Everyone is, building on shoulders of giants, from the very beginning with your parents, you're totally dependent on them. And of course they're trying to teach you independence. So there's like this tug and pull, there's this tension, yin and yang, if you want to use that. And so you don't want to go to the place where it's like, no, I'm like completely independent. Well, I think that's probably what life teaches you, is that like you either swing to one extreme or the other because it's easier. What's hard is the middle, where you're like trying to balance the tug and pull, which is like, yeah, take care of your own stuff, pick up your clothes to clear, and also when you need help, ask for it. And when someone else needs help, like sacrifice for that, make a space. I wish I could do better at, like I said, I'm still learning, but I can tell you where I want to go, and I want to be more like these people that I'm living around. And I feel like it's like lifting me up because their cultural belief is different than mine, and it's better.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
better. So I do think it's like there is a cultural current, and as I've been around the world, especially I spent 3.5 years on international poverty alleviation, and I got exposure to lots of different cultures around the world where they're not rich like we are here in the United States. And I mean, in fact, even the most like poverty-stricken individual in the United States is like basically wealthy compared to I mean, I'm not saying there's not real suffering in the United States because there is, but it's altogether of a different sort most of the time. I think in those environments, people really are more sensitive to the fact of their interdependence. Whereas like,
Yeah.
you start trusting in money and in systems that at their core are pretty fragile, and you start thinking that like you really are like independent, you know? And then something happens and you're like, dang, I there's an interdependence here that really matters, you know? And I think like from a like purely like in my religious views, will often talk about like salvation is an individual concern, exaltation is a family concern or a group, and it's like you're 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 saved individually through Christ, but then there's something even bigger and beyond that, which is this idea of exaltation as families, and I think there's a lesson there that it's not just about, I'm thinking about, you know not to get too religious, but like think about all of the people that you just in in your experience who are good religious people. They're looking out for each other. They're looking out. They're just built. They've decided to live their life in a certain way that is more community oriented. There's just something really powerful about that. I love this. I sent you this quote. Hold on, I want to share this. This was this idea of, I think there's like a very practical community thing, which is that like if you want to go fast, go alone, or you want to go far, go together. That kind of
Yep.
idea that's a really important understanding. And but there's another thing is the poet John Donne. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a place of the continent, a part of the man, of the main. Or this idea that you really are connected. You're part of this interconnectedness. Whether you like it or not, you can try to shun that, but it's still there. I don't think it also like another like it's just a better way to live. I don't believe as I'm a optimist. I've worked in technology all my life, but I believe in human connection as a major driving factor. And I think there's a lot of things in technology that's severed human connection in negative ways that I will look back on and say, oh, that was really a bad idea, because it pulls at the sinews and this like mycelium network of connectedness between humans in a very negative way. So I think community is like it's the way it's supposed to be. And
Yeah.
if you're not feeling connected, if you're not feeling a part of a community, then that can be used to create a lot of badness in your life. It's like a lever or wedge, and so you just got to be really careful about that. Whereas when you have that like protective network, you can manage a lot of stress. You can manage a lot of crap. You can manage a lot of life that is complicated and difficult.
When I think
And
of so
yeah,
I think of this idea of self-sufficiency as a lie. That's I think self-sufficiency is a lie. And what I mean is I don't mean that it's not possible, right? Like you could go into the woods and live off the berries, and like it is, and frankly, like you could even do that with your family if you wanted. You could go live off the berries in the woods. Um, but the lie is that it's like the a positive thing for society. Like,
or for you, or for you.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's much healthier, much better for you, for your family to be part of a larger system, to be participating in a larger system, to be giving and taking and commingling and supporting a community. That is a healthier and happier way to survive. And the lie is that like the happiness comes from extreme self-sufficiency. I don't think that's true. I think, you know, happiness and stability and like, I think community is something that can provide that. Not to mention provide that for your kids. You know, obviously, like I care a lot about the development of my children. That's where we're at. Like we're working really hard on that.
100%.
And
Yeah.
and the development of the kids is going to be better in a community than it will be if we're picking berries in the woods. I believe.
Also, yes, I will say that. And also, like, it life is full of difficult things. And if anyone tells you otherwise, it's just they're lying. Like, it's full of difficult things. And so that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means that's what life is like. And when you have that backing and that support, I'll tell you, I've wondered about this. So there's this story up here in this valley where we live, where early on, the pioneers that were settling the valley, huge snowstorm, everyone ran out of food. And the only way to get food was south of us, Idaho. And that's the only place they had food. And so the dads, basically, everyone got a sled and they got their skis and they hoofed it or skied it. Really, it was in the wintertime, or snowshoed. I think they were mostly snowshoes. So I think that was the predominant mode, but I'm sure maybe some of them had skis. And then they pack up and they throw, 50 pounds on their back or on their sled, and then they're trucking it back so that not just their family, but everyone in the community can eat. I think there's something bonding that happens when you go through hard things together. And so I wouldn't shy away from that. When someone's going through a hard time, that's like on a silver platter, this like beautiful gift to say, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to develop community. And whether it's rallying around someone, some family, like you sometimes hear these stories about the family whose house burns down and how the community comes together about that. I think stuff like that happens all the time. The burning house is very obvious, but there's a lot of quiet desperation. There's a lot of quiet trauma and difficulties, and the community can gather around that as well. It's just a wonderful thing. So I think it's something we should all strive for in our own ways and in our own kind of like spheres of influence. I do think it can be done anywhere. I wouldn't have said that 7 years ago. I wouldn't be so like interested or focused on this, but you grow, as you grow up, you change your opinion about things. You change your ideas about what matters in life. And community matters a lot more than I ever imagined. And really, really grateful for the opportunity to keep trying to figure that out.
I love it. Well, I think we could wrap there. What do you think?
I'm tired. Let's go.
Well, this has been another episode. Thanks for joining. We'll see you every Friday.
All right. Later.
See ya.